The Tale of Muramasa and Masamune, a duel of blades. A single strike, that's all it took. In 1611, a master swordsmith named Muramasa challenged his legendary teacher Masamune to prove which of them could forge the superior blade. As the story goes, they placed their swords in a gentle stream. Muramasa's sword cut everything that floated past: leaves, fish, even the very air that brushed against its edge. Masamune's blade, however, seemed to do nothing at all. The fish swam around it, leaves drifted past untouched. Muramasa laughed triumphantly, but a passing monk quietly observed, "Your blade is indeed powerful, but it cuts without discretion. Master Masamune's sword knows what not to cut. It is the blade of wisdom." This legend captures the essence of what makes the Japanese sword unique among all the world's weapons. It's not just a tool of war. It's a philosophical statement, a work of art, and according to many, the physical manifestation of its creator's soul. But what makes these blades so extraordinary that even today, nearly 800 years after their golden age, they're still considered among the greatest achievements in metallurgy? The answer begins in the earth itself. Japanese iron sand, or satetsu, was notoriously difficult to work with. Unlike the high-quality ore available in Europe, this iron sand was full of impurities. What seemed like a curse, however, became a blessing in disguise. Japanese swordsmiths developed increasingly sophisticated techniques to overcome these limitations, eventually creating something unprecedented in the history of metalworking. Picture yourself in a traditional Japanese forge, or kajiba, where the temperature reaches over 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. The master smith, or toko, begins with a block of tamahagan, special steel made from iron sand, through a process that takes weeks of continuous work. But this is just the beginning. What happens next would become one of Japan's most closely guarded secrets for centuries. The smith repeatedly heats, hammers, and folds the steel, sometimes up to 20 times. Each fold doubles the number of layers. By the end, a single blade might contain over 1,000,000 layers of steel. This technique, called tanrin, or folding, does more than just strengthen the metal. It creates an intimate dance between hard and soft steel, between rigidity and flexibility. The harder outer steel provides a razor-sharp edge, while the softer core allows the blade to absorb impact without shattering. But here's something that might surprise you. The iconic curved shape of the Japanese sword wasn't part of the original design. The earliest Japanese swords were straight, similar to Chinese models. The curve emerged gradually, reaching its familiar form during the Kamakura period, 1185–1333. This wasn't just an aesthetic choice. The curved blade could be drawn and cut in a single fluid motion, perfect for the mounted combat style of Japanese warriors. The creation of each sword is steeped in ritual. Before beginning, the swordsmith purifies himself through fasting and prayer. The forge itself is considered a sacred space, with a small Shinto shrine called a yashiro installed to honor the god of swordsmiths, Inari. Even today, modern swordsmiths maintain these traditions, believing that the spiritual state of the craftsman directly affects the quality of the blade. The most crucial moment in the sword's creation comes during the hardening process, or yaki-ire. The blade is coated with a special clay mixture, thicker on the spine, thinner on the edge. When the red-hot blade is plunged into water, this differential hardening creates the hallmark wavy line along the blade called the heiman. Each swordsmith's heiman is as distinctive as a painter's brushstroke, and collectors can often identify who made a blade simply by studying this pattern. This brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of Japanese sword making, the concept of tamashi, or soul. Unlike Western traditions where a sword might be blessed after its creation, Japanese swordsmiths believe the blade's soul emerges during the forging process itself. Every hammer strike, every fold, Every prayer uttered during its creation becomes part of the sword's spirit. This isn't mere superstition. It's a philosophy that demanded absolute concentration and dedication from the craftsman. Consider the words of Matsuba Kunimasa, one of Japan's current leading swordsmiths. "When I'm forging, there is no past, no future. There is only the moment of impact between hammer and steel. In that moment, I must pour everything I am into the blade. This is how a sword gains its spirit." The history of Japanese swords is written in both glory and infamy. Perhaps no blades are more infamous than those crafted by Muramasa, the legendary swordsmith whose story we opened with. His swords were said to be bloodthirsty, cursed with an insatiable desire to kill. The Tokugawa shogunate even banned these blades after several mysterious accidents involving family members. But was this reputation deserved, or was it political propaganda? The truth, as often happens, lies somewhere in between. Muramasa's technical skill was undeniable. His blades were incredibly sharp and durable, preferred by many samurai for their cutting ability. However, this very quality led to their dark reputation. In an era where swords were constantly tested, often on condemned criminals or even random wayfarers, Muramasa's blades became associated with unnecessary bloodshed. It didn't help that several of his swords were owned by enemies of the Tokugawa clan. In contrast, consider the blades of Masamune, often called Japan's greatest swordsmith. His most famous work, the Honjo Masamune, became a symbol of the shogunate's power and legitimacy. This sword passed down through generations of shoguns until World War II, when it mysteriously disappeared during the American occupation. To this day, its whereabouts remain unknown, making it perhaps the most valuable lost art object in the world. But what made these swords so special? Imagine holding a Masamune blade. The first thing you'd notice is the weight, or rather the lack of it. A typical katana weighs between 2.5 to 3.5 pounds, but it feels lighter thanks to its perfect balance. The blade itself seems to come alive in your hands, the light playing across its surface in ways that reveal the complex patterns created during forging. These patterns, called hada, are like fingerprints in steel. They tell the story of how the blade was made, how many times it was folded, even the specific techniques used by the smith. Experts can read these patterns like a book, determining not just who made the sword, but often when and where it was made. Take the famous Dojigiri Yasutsuna, one of Japan's 5 greatest swords. Its surface shows a distinctive pattern called Matsukawa Hada, resembling pine tree bark. This pattern isn't just decorative, it's evidence of the sophisticated folding technique used to create a blade that could supposedly cut through an oni or demon. Speaking of cutting power, let's address a common misconception. You've probably seen movies where samurai slice through armor like it's made of paper. The reality was quite different. Japanese swords weren't designed to cut through armor. They were crafted to find the gaps between armor plates, to cut through the weak points. This required incredible precision from both the sword and its wielder. This brings us to an essential point about Japanese swords. They were part of a sophisticated martial system. The katana wasn't just a weapon. It was the core of an entire fighting philosophy. The way a samurai carried his sword, the way he drew it, even the way he cleaned and maintained it, all were governed by strict protocols that reflected deeper philosophical principles. Consider the ritual of drawing the sword, or aido. The blade must be drawn, cut, cleaned, and resheathed in one fluid motion. This isn't just martial arts choreography. It's a meditation on life and death, a physical expression of Zen principles. Every movement must be perfect because in real combat, there would be no second chance. The philosophical importance of the sword is perhaps best illustrated by the ritual of sword testing, or tameshigiri. Today, this is practiced on rolled straw mats, but historically it was far more gruesome. professional sword testers would test new blades on the bodies of executed criminals. The results were meticulously recorded, with some blades achieving legendary status for cutting through multiple bodies in a single stroke. But here's something that might surprise you. Despite their fearsome reputation, Japanese swords were primarily symbols of authority rather than practical weapons of war. By the time the katana reached its final form in the Muromachi period, 1336–1573, Japan was actually in a time of relative peace. The sword became increasingly ceremonial, though no less important to Japanese culture. In modern Japan, there are fewer than 30 active swordsmiths who have achieved the rank of mukansa, meaning their work is beyond any need for official evaluation. These master craftsmen are living national treasures, carrying forward a tradition that stretches back more than a millennium. But in today's world, what does it mean to be a swordsmith? Meet Yoshindo Yoshihara, a 21st-century swordsmith whose family has been making blades for generations. His workshop in Tokyo might seem surprisingly modern. There's electric lighting, temperature controls, and even some power tools for preliminary work. But step closer, and you'll find that the essential processes remain unchanged from centuries ago. The hammer must still fall by hand, Yoshihara explains. The steel must still be folded by human skill. No machine can replace the knowledge passed down through generations. He points to a blade in progress, explaining how modern technology has helped him understand the metallurgy of sword making without changing its fundamental nature. This marriage of ancient and modern is particularly evident in the study of historical blades. Using X-ray crystallography and electron microscopes, scientists have revealed secrets that would amaze the ancient masters. They've discovered that the best Japanese swords contain needle-like crystals of cementite, a super-hard iron carbide embedded in a matrix of softer steel. This structure, achieved through intuition and experience by ancient swordsmiths, is remarkably similar to modern composite materials. But perhaps the most surprising aspect of modern Japanese sword-making is its strict regulation. Under Japanese law, swordsmiths can produce only 2 long swords, over 24 inches per month. Each blade must be registered with the government, and exports are tightly controlled. These regulations, far from stifling the art, have helped preserve its integrity by preventing mass production and maintaining high standards. The process of becoming a swordsmith today is equally rigorous. Apprentices must train for at least 5 years before they can even apply for their license. They learn not just metalworking, but also art, history, and philosophy. Many fail the licensing exam multiple times before succeeding. As one apprentice put it, you're not just learning to make swords, you're learning to be worthy of making them. This dedication has kept the tradition alive, even as its practical purpose has faded. Today's swords are created primarily for preservation and art appreciation. They're displayed in museums, collected by enthusiasts, and used in martial arts demonstrations. But they're no less real for being ceremonial. Each one is still forged with the potential to cut. The influence of the Japanese sword extends far beyond Japan. Modern bladesmiths worldwide study Japanese techniques, and materials scientists continue to be amazed by the sophisticated metallurgy achieved centuries ago. The pattern welding techniques developed for Japanese swords have influenced everything from modern knife-making to the production of high-performance steel tools. Yet perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Japanese sword is philosophical rather than practical. In a world of mass production and disposable goods, these blades remind us that some things are worth doing the hard way. Each sword represents thousands of hammer strikes, countless hours of focused concentration, and an unbroken chain of knowledge passed down through generations. The sword also teaches us about the nature of perfection. As one modern swordsmith observed, we strive for perfection knowing we can never achieve it. But it is in this striving that we find meaning. This philosophy resonates strongly in today's fast-paced world, where the value of patient, methodical craftsmanship is often forgotten. Looking to the future, Japanese sword making faces both challenges and opportunities. While the number of traditional swordsmiths is declining, interest in Japanese swords has never been higher. Museums worldwide showcase these blades not just as weapons, but as art objects that embody the height of human craftsmanship. Modern collectors and enthusiasts are also helping preserve this tradition. Organizations like the Japanese Sword Museum in Tokyo work to educate the public about sword appreciation and conservation. Meanwhile, a new generation of martial artists continues to study the way of the sword, ensuring that these blades remain more than mere museum pieces. As we conclude our journey through the world of Japanese swords, remember that each blade is more than just a weapon or a work of art. It's a physical embodiment of the principles that shape Japanese culture: dedication, attention to detail, and the constant pursuit of perfection. In a world that increasingly values speed and convenience over craftsmanship and tradition, these principles are more relevant than ever. Thank you for watching this exploration of the Japanese sword. If you've enjoyed learning about this fascinating aspect of Japanese culture, please consider subscribing to our channel for more in-depth looks at Japanese history and traditions. Don't forget to hit the like button and share this video with others who might be interested in the amazing world of Japanese craftsmanship. Until next time.